Good morning, it's Michelle. I wanted to make something quick for the kitchen for Christmas. Well, for all year round, but Christmas always provokes us or pushes us to get things done. So that's what I'm doing today. I've got a really old towel, which I am cutting up to make into a set of towels for the kitchen specifically, and I wanted them to be a little bit prettier than usual. So here I'm going to show you what I have done. I have taken an old towel. I've cut it the lengths that I wanted to hang on the wardrobe. I've chosen a fabric as well that I want to use for the tabs. So this lovely little fabric I have in my stash, and this very old green towel. I've cut it up into strips, the width and the length that I want my towels to be. Mine are going to hang on the door handle of one of the drawers. So I've made it long enough. In this case, mine is probably about 50 centimeters at least in length. You're now going to go to the sewing machine and you're going to bind all the edges. Now you could do that with bias binding. You could just fold it over and zigzag it, whatever you like, but that's what you're going to do first. Let me show you the finished one I've made. This one has got some buttons on, so it goes through the handle of the drawer unit, and then I've put buttons on it. But obviously you could also put poppers on it or anything like that, as long as it's got a fastening. I've done one up by hand. So there you go. That's what it's going to be like. So come over to the machine and you'll see I am just doing a very simple zigzag edge all the way around to bind it. Now, because it's an old towel, there's very little fluff, so you don't have to worry about the machine stitches being too short or not holding in the edges, because it's going to hold this absolutely fine. So I'm going to finish that off and get back to you. Okay, so finish the edging all the way around, 3 sides only. You don't need to do the top edge because it is going to be encased in the strap or handle, whatever you want to call it at the top. I have chosen this fabric, and what I'm going to do, because if you have a look at this one, I quite like this pleat in the middle. It gives you the width you need for drying your hands, but it doesn't take up as much space when it's hanging, so it's not as wide. So I find the center point of my towel. What I then do is I put a tuck into it to the center and then fold it back. There's the center there. I've made it too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it back a little bit more on itself like so. And I have this little edge here sticking over. Because it's folded already once, I don't want to have that included in this already thick, bulky towel. If you're using a thinner towel, the cheaper towels are probably really good for this because you don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to fold this the other side as well so that my tuck meets in the middle. I'm then going to simply put a pin, not too close to the edge, across here to hold it in place. And the reason I do that is because when I put my tab across the top, I don't want it to I don't want to take the pins out, and I want to be able to just sew it. Now what you want to do is measure twice the width across and add 2 centimeters for your seam allowance. So double the width across and the length you want it. So in my case, I'm making it this long. Let's see, I only have an inch ruler here. It's about 10 inches long. Oh, yeah, I've got centimeters here, actually. Don't know what that is in centimeters. Let's see. 5, 10, 15, 20, about 25 centimeters in length. And then you take it to the machine, fold it in half. Okay, stitch down the side seam. And then what I've done is I've turned it over and pressed it open. I've pressed it so that the center seam is in the middle. That's going to become the inside of my tea towel. Now, if you've got a one-way direction fabric, which this is, you need to be careful because you want, when you do the fold over, you want the teacups to be upright, which means you're going to do it upside down, because with the fold over, the tea towel, the picture stands upright, but on the back, it's upside down. Okay, if you're really fussy, you'll have to cut your fabric in half and rejoin them so that your teacups are upright on the back and on the front, but you're not going to see that in this case. It's fine. Right, let's go back to this. I'm going to turn it back wrong side out. I'm now going to feed my towel into the tube and pull it all the way through to the top. Okay, so my towel is going to be encased. Pulling it through, and then I pull it back so that my center line. Okay, so we have slid our sleeve of fabric over the towel. I've got the towel upright the way I'm going to display it. Okay, when we stitch across here now, we're going to go to the sewing machine, stitch across there, nice strong seam. And then when we pull this up, you'll see the teapots are going to be upside down on the way we have it. So like this, that's what it's going to be like. But when we close this up and we bring it over to tie up the buttons over the handle or whatever you're using, you're going to see your teapots that are on the front of your tea towel are going to actually be the right way up. So once you've done that, seam upright as well on top of the towel, go and sew a seam across there. Be careful, it is very thick, go slowly. If you've got one of these, come over here and I'll show you on my machine. You get different looking ones of these. This is one that comes with a bernina. This is to put underneath your pedal. So if you go down there, it goes underneath your pedal so that if you are sewing something really bulky, what tends to snap your needle is if the needle is bent, if the needle hits the foot itself. And that happens because when the front is too high, it could hit the back here. And when the back is too high, let's say it's like that, it could hit the front plate here. And that's a very common reason when you're using very bulky fabrics that you actually break a needle. Also go nice and slowly according to your machine. But if you've got one of these, pop that behind your foot so that it's keeping your foot, your presser foot, level as you sew. And then you won't have those problems. Straight stitch, because I was on zigzag. So I'm going to go forward and back. Don't hit the little plastic thing. Okay, did you see that drop off there? So I'm going to pop that back under there. And we're going to sew very nice and carefully. You can hear the machine is having to work a little bit harder. Now the pins are still in here, which is why I said don't put them near the top, put them part way down. And you also want to make sure everything is nice and neat and not folded. So it's going through a lot of layers here. When I get to this end, remember this fabric's much higher, so I'm putting this little plastic lifter underneath, and then I'm going to just reverse a little bit. There you go, you're done. Stop. We've now done that stitch across the top here, and I've pulled the fabric over to the right side. And here's what I was saying. Here's your seam in the center, and your pots, in my case, my teapots are all upside down. But when I fold it back over on itself to hang it, it's going to be the right way up. Now, one thing I would say is this is just one method of folding. There's lots of ways you can do this. You could do a double row of gathering stitches here and gather your tea towel. If you're using a tea towel. If you're using a towel, they're much thicker, so that might not be the best option. I tried that on my machine and it did work, but not as well as I would have liked. Now we are going to tuck under this edge and we are going to stitch it in down. So just tuck that under, and when you take it to your machine, one-handed is a nightmare, isn't it? My cameraman went downstairs to do some actual work. When I say actual work, his day job. I'm going to sew across the top here to close it up. I have stitched across there, tucked my seam allowance in, and I have stitched the opening closed. At this point in the show, you want to do decisions. You want to decide how much you're going to fold it over. It depends on how long you made it and how long you want it to hang down as well. And then decide what sort of fastenings you're going to put on. You could put poppers on this or buttons. And in this case, I'm going to do 2 buttonholes over here and over here. And to do that, I'm going to simply, I don't do this with any precision at all. I just make a nice big buttonhole so that I can then choose a button from my stash. And I do like the bright ones. So I'm going to put 2 lines here. Actually, I'm going to make the buttonhole even bigger than that because I would like to use some of my really big buttons on here. So I'm going to just do a mark where the start and the end of my buttonhole goes, because this machine that I'm working on, I will show you in a minute, has a manual buttonholer. Okay, if we're able to do this. I'm not even going to change the presser foot. It's a tea towel after all. Okay, got to get it the right way. First of all, establish what direction your machine sews a buttonhole in. If it sews forwards first, I'm sorry, I'm just getting myself aligned here. If it sews forward first, you obviously want to start your buttonhole at the far side, away from you. Hold on one second, let's get this set up for you. If your machine sews a buttonhole backwards first, you obviously want to start at the end of your buttonhole, the one closest to you. This is a Bernina 1000 Special, so it's all manual. And here's my buttonhole foot. The only thing I need to do is change the stitch length. And to do that, I turn this dial. And I know to get a nice dense buttonhole, I want to be close to 0. So I'm going to put it sort of at half. That setting over there, on about half. And this is what you have to dial in. So we're going to dial the buttonhole knob to position 1 first of all. And then I'm going to stand you here and hopefully it doesn't wobble too much while I'm doing this. My apologies if it does. Okay, I've got my tea towel on my lap so it doesn't pull on my buttonhole. As I said, I'm going to start at the end of my buttonhole because I know this buttonhole goes forward. So the first thing it's going to do is zigzag, and this gives me an opportunity to make sure my satin stitch is dense enough. Finish with the needle in the up position and then turn my dial to position number 2. Then going to do a bar. Oh no, it goes backwards in a straight stitch first. Because it's manual, you need to watch where to stop. Needle up, turn it to position 3. Does a bar tack for you. You can do as many stitches as that as you like. Turn it to position 4. It's now going to zigzag along that straight row it's just done. And once again, it is a manual machine, so you have to watch for when to stop. Needle in the up position, turn it to 5. And 5 is the opposite end's bar tack. And then finally 6 is going to do a little row of dense straight stitches to end it off. And there you have it. So let me take it off the machine and show you the buttonhole that it's made. As you can see, I've made really big buttonholes in this case because I wanted to. I want to use some of those really crazy big decorative buttons that I've got hanging around here. So there you go. There's a beautiful buttonhole. Now your challenge, being a manual machine, is to make the next one exactly the same. So we turn the dial clockwise only. So it's now on 6, goes back to 0, and then back to 1. And we are going to do buttonhole number 2. So starting at the end, making sure it's a similar distance from the edge this way and front to back, so that the bar tacks are in a similar place. And we start again. We go until we reach our line. Needle up, position 2. It's going to straight stitch to the beginning. Stop when you're a stitch away. Needle up, position 3 is our bar tack. Position 4. Stop when it gets to here, needle up. Always needle up, because if you notice when you turn the dial, the needle jumps backward and forward. You don't want that to be in the fabric while that's going on. Now I'm going to do the bar tack across the top. Position 6 is the final straight stitch to anchor your thread. Pull that off the machine. Snip your threads. Sorry if my hand is in the way. Could have put the phone, I suppose, on the opposite side. There you go. You've got 2 buttonholes now, which are exactly what I wanted. Last bit, if you don't have a chisel, buttonhole chisel, then you can use your quick unpick and cut your buttonholes, or a very sharp pair of scissors to put in there and cut. So you put a pin across the top so that you don't have an accident and by mistake cut all the way through the end of your buttonhole. So you pop your needle, the point of your unpicker in there, and very carefully making sure you're in between your 2 rows of stitches. That's very important. Otherwise your fabric around the cut will fray and your buttonhole will be basically useless. So there we have cut this one, and we do the same on this side. Pop your needle in at that bar tack, and that's purely your insurance policy. Pop your thingy in there and then cut along, stopping obviously where your pin is. Take your pin out, et voila, you have 2 beautiful buttonholes. Now, when I turn this over, you'll be able to see. I've got it upside down. There you go. You'll be able to see I've got 2 lovely buttonholes there, and I can grab some buttons out of my stash and stitch them into the location over here. And your tea towel, your actual kitchen towel, is ready. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that, and do some of these for your kitchen. Remember, you can make them out of tea towels, the cotton ones or whatever toweling ones you've got in your kitchen already, or you can make them out of old towels that you are going to get rid of anyways. Another fantastic way to upcycle something that's very useful. I will have 4 of these which can rotate in the kitchen, and they will live in the drawer with the tea towels in the kitchen rather than in the towel cupboard upstairs. So there you go. Another wonderful project for you to try at home for yourselves. Have a lovely day, folks. Bye-bye. Bonus content. Yeah, that's what they say, don't they? Anyway, I thought I'd just give you a quick show of how I do buttonholes on my sewing machine. I'm going to check that I've aligned you to where you should be. so you can see what I'm doing. Hold on, be patient. Right, that'll be fine. I've chosen 2 large buttons that I know will go through these large buttonholes. Okay, first thing to do. I then line up my fabric, make sure I know where I want the buttonholes to go. The buttons, not the buttonholes. I know where the buttonholes are already. And I'm going to put a pin in just to mark the location of the top of the buttonhole because you want to be careful where you put them. If I put them where I put the pin now, I've just realized that's wrong, because when you pull on this, the button is going to slide to the bottom of the buttonhole. What I want to actually do is make sure that when the button is attached and it slides, it's going to sit where I want it to. So I'm going to put these ones here and here. I then pull the pins through the buttonhole, leaving them there as a mark. If you're worried that you're going to ride over your pins, just put a mark where you're going to put your buttonhole, your button. Oh my word. Take your pins out. Now, some of you are going to think this is crazy. You can't do a button on a sewing machine. Well, I can tell you, you definitely can. I've been doing this for a very long time and it works perfectly. You do get presser feet, which are just for doing buttons. Michelle, okay, for putting on a button, but you don't have to have one if you're just very careful. I'm putting my stitch length back on 0. I'm turning my dial back to 0. I'm going to put my stitch width, which is the zigzag, to 3, because the holes in these are probably about 3 or 4 millimeters, and we're going to test that in a second. So let's just line it back up here. I've got a mark. I'm going to pop my button onto that mark. If my button is uneven, I'm going to put this tab underneath it so that the foot can lie nice and straight. Okay, remember the reason we did that. The other thing that I love to do, and I don't always do this, but I'll do it for the camera so that you can see that it's doable. Put a piece of sellotape or washi tape or whatever tape you've got that'll come off easily. Line your button up with your mark and stick it down. Okay, I'm going to pop this little thing under here so it sits flat. I may only need one for the height. Okay, put it underneath your presser foot so that you can clearly see where your needle is going to go. Put your presser foot down, lower your presser foot, and turn your needle using the hand wheel on the side until it goes into either of the holes. You keep turning your hand wheel manually. Now, I can see straight away that on the right is going to hit the middle of the button. So I need to increase the width of my zigzag. So I'm going to go to 4 for now and see, still not enough. I'm going to go to 5. These are big buttons, so they generally have a much bigger hole. The swing is now too big to the left. So I'm going to turn it back down to 4. This is where, if you're doing lots of buttons, it's quite handy to do this a few times manually so that you get it absolutely in the center. Okay, I now know it's in the center and I can slowly zigzag. Remember, my stitch length is on 0. So my needles, my feed dogs aren't moving. And I just go up and down a few times to make sure it's anchored really well. I'm done. That's button number 1. Relift your presser foot. Take your tape off. Transfer it to your other button. Move it across. You can clip your threads at this point if you want, but I don't need to. I'm going to line up my second button over here. I'm going to put my little lifter underneath. The back of the presser foot. Wow, these holes even look bigger. So I'm going to try that stitch width again. I never assume, because I love mismatched buttons, never assume that the buttonholes are exactly the same. And when I'm saying buttonholes, and this time I mean the holes in the button itself are exactly the same distance apart. Every single button, unless it's identical out the bag, I test. So do that as many times as you feel you need to. I'm a bit obsessive. And then you're done. Clip that off. There are my snips. Clip that off, and then at the back I'll cut them off in a bit. Right, there you go. Tape off. 2 buttons attached very securely. If, like me, you're worried that these are going to come out undone, like so many ready-to-wear off-the-shelf items you buy in the shop, they lose their buttons all the time. Go put a dot of fabric glue or nail polish or something like that onto the button, and it will be fine. And there we have it. Fold it over. Pull my buttons through. You can pretend it's hanging up. And look how cute that looks. I've just selected plain grey buttons for this one. There we have it. One very nice garment for the kitchen. And the buttons are nicely secured. Oh, I need to clip that little tail there. And that is going to look very nice in the kitchen. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has really helped you learn how to make these lovely projects, how to make a buttonhole on a manual sewing machine like this Bernina 1000 Special, and also how to attach buttons. Have a lovely day, folks. Bye-bye.